Hello, class! It's your favorite English teacher. Yeah, did you miss me? Well, this is the new chapter of the American English file, Book 4, Part 3A, The Truth About Air Travel. But before we start, make sure to like and subscribe and recommend this video to your friends who want to learn English. You see, I keep my promise. I teach you English every day. So, you should keep your promise and study every day. Let's learn together. My friends, Part 1, Listening and Vocabulary, Air Travel. I need you to listen to some in-flight announcements and match them to the pictures A to D. What information or instructions are the passengers being given? So listen and number the pictures. Easy, right? Let's go.
2.2 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board this flight to Hong Kong. Please place all carry-on luggage in the overhead compartments or underneath the seat in front of you. We ask that you please fasten your seatbelts and, for safety reasons, we advise you to keep them fastened throughout the flight.
2. We also ask that you make sure your seat backs and tray tables are in their full upright and locked positions for takeoff. Please turn off all personal electronic devices, including laptops and cell phones. We remind you that smoking is prohibited for the duration of the flight. 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, we ask for your attention for the following safety instructions. Please read the safety information card located in the seat pocket in front of you. There are 6 emergency exits on this aircraft, all marked with exit signs. Take a minute to locate the exit closest to you. Note that the nearest exit may be behind you.
4.
The safety information card is in the seat pocket in front of you. Please read it. It shows you the equipment carried on this aircraft for your safety. Your life jacket is located under your seat. In the unlikely event of a water landing, place the life jacket over your head, fasten the straps at the front, and pull them tight. Do not inflate the jacket inside the aircraft. As you leave the aircraft, pull down on the red tabs to inflate the vest. If necessary, the life jacket can be inflated by blowing through these tubes.
All right, very good, very nice. You did great. Check your answers with your friends. All right, so these are the answers. Very nice. Now, I need you to listen again. What word or phrase do the flight attendants use to mean, for example, small bags or suitcases? Listen and write the words. Let's go.
2.2 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board this flight to Hong Kong. Please place all carry-on luggage in the overhead compartments or underneath the seat in front of you. We ask that you please fasten your seatbelts and, for safety reasons, we advise you to keep them fastened throughout the flight.
2. We also ask that you make sure your seat backs and tray tables are in their full upright and locked positions for takeoff. Please turn off all personal electronic devices, including laptops and cell phones. We remind you that smoking is prohibited for the duration of the flight. 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, we ask for your attention for the following safety instructions. Please read the safety information card located in the seat pocket in front of you. There are 6 emergency exits on this aircraft, all marked with exit signs. Take a minute to locate the exit closest to you. Note that the nearest exit may be behind you.
4.
The safety information card is in the seat pocket in front of you. Please read it. It shows you the equipment carried on this aircraft for your safety. Your life jacket is located under your seat. In the unlikely event of a water landing, place the life jacket over your head, fasten the straps at the front, and pull them tight. Do not inflate the jacket inside the aircraft. As you leave the aircraft, pull down on the red tabs to inflate the vest. If necessary, the life jacket can be inflated by blowing through these tubes.
All right. Before we answer, you can rewind multiple times and listen again. Check your answers with your friends. Very good. So, small bags and suitcases, carry-on luggage. The storage area above your seat, we call them overhead compartments. Number 3, put on your seat belts. Fasten. All right? So, T is silent, fasten. Phones and tablets, etc. We call them electronic devices. Number 5, the doors where you can get out of the plane quickly if there's a problem. Well, emergency exits. Number 6, the things you have to put on if the plane is going to land on water. We call them life jackets. And last one, to blow air inside something, to inflate. Do you know what inflation is? That's a different word, but very similar. You did great. Let's continue. So far, so good. Match the words and definitions. Okay, you are at the airport. For example, airport terminal. What is it? It's a building at an airport divided into arrivals and departures, domestic and international flights. Very good. You can stop the video and do it yourself. But if you have done it, listen and check with me. Ready? Let's do it.
2.3. At the airport. 1. A.
Airport terminal.
2. D.
Baggage drop-off.
3. I.
Baggage claim.
4. C.
Check-in desk.
5. J.
Customs.
6. B.
Departures board.
7. G.
Gate.
8. H.
Runway.
9. E.
Security.
10. F.
VIP lounge.
Very good. You did great, as always. But we're not done yet. Let's continue. Okay, that's it for the airport, but now you're on board. I need you to complete the text with the words in the list. For example, look, I often fly to Chile on business. I always choose an aisle seat so that I can get up and walk around more easily. Very good. You know the drill. Stop the video, take your time, and do it yourself. And if you have done it, check with your friends, listen, and check your answers, as always.
2.4. On board.
I often fly to Chile on business. I always choose an aisle seat so that I can get up and walk around more easily. Sometimes there is turbulence when the plane flies over the Andes, which I don't enjoy, and the cabin crew tells the passengers to put their seatbelts on. There aren't many direct flights to Chile from Paris, so I usually have to get a connecting flight in Atlanta. Whenever I take long-haul flights, I always suffer from jet lag because of the time difference, and I feel tired for several days.
Very nice. Now you know what jet lag means. Long-haul flights, direct flights, connecting flights, seat belts, cabin crew, aisle. You know it all. My friends, travel, trip, or journey. Okay, we're gonna cover that. I need you to complete the sentences with travel, verb or noun, trip, or journey. For example, number 1, we're going on a 5-day trip to the mountains. All right, take your time and do it yourself. Or just listen and Do it with me. Let's go.
2.5. Travel, trip, or journey. 1,
We're going on a 5-day trip to the mountains.
2,
How long was your journey across China?
It was about 2 months long, and it was amazing.
3,
Do you have to travel much for your job?
4.
Have a good trip. See you when you get back.
All right, very good. So we have 3 words: travel, trip, and journey. But I need you to tell me what are the differences between the 3 words. You can also check Google to help you. Okay? Very good. So travel is usually used as a verb. However, it can be used as an uncountable noun. The other one, the trip, the noun, means to go somewhere and come back, including the time you stay there. And journey is also usually used as a noun. It means the time when you travel from one place to another, but does not include the time you stay there. So those are the differences. Don't forget. Okay, now that you know the difference between trip, travel, and journey, we're going to cover some verbs together. Complete the sentences with a phrasal verb from the list in the past tense. Check in, drop off, fill out, get off, get on, pick up, take off. All right? For example, number 1, my husband dropped me off at the airport 2 hours before the flight. Very good. Take your time and do it yourself, as always. You can just listen and check with me. The choice is yours. Let's go.
2.6. Phrasal verbs related to air travel. 1,
My husband dropped me off at the airport 2 hours before the flight.
2,
I checked in online the day before I was going to fly.
3,
As soon as I got on the plane, I sat down in the first empty seat.
4,
The plane took off late because of the bad weather.
5,
I filled out the immigration form for the U.S., which the cabin crew gave me shortly before landing.
6,
When I got off the plane, I felt exhausted after the long flight.
7,
When I picked up my luggage at baggage claim, I bumped into an old friend who had been on the same flight.
Very good. And that's all there is to it. You did great. All the way to my favorite part, reading. First, read the back cover of a book about air travel. Can you guess the answers to any of the questions? Okay, let's read it together. Air Travel, the Inside Story. Air Babylon is a best-selling book co-written by Imogen Edwards Jones and anonymous airline staff members whose identities must remain secret. It tells the inside story about flying and answers all these questions and many more. Okay, let's see the questions together. Is it really worth listening to the safety demonstration telling you how to put your life jacket on? Why is there usually a big mirror when you are going through customs? Why can you sometimes smell roasted chicken in a plane when they are serving you fish? Why do airport staff members get annoyed with some passengers who ask for a wheelchair? Very good. So I need you to think about these questions and write your answers. Very well. Now, I want you to read the passage, all right? And first, check your answers. And at the same time, mark these sentences from 1 to 8, true or false. Very good. I'll be waiting. Do your best.
6.5 hours later.
You know what time it is. Let's read it together. Most airline passengers think it is laughable that a small yellow life jacket with a whistle will make any difference if the plane crashes into the water. However, In some cases, like when a hijacked Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 767 or 767 landed in the Indian Ocean in 1996, it did. Despite instructions from the cabin crew not to pre-inflate their life jacket inside the plane, several passengers did. They were unable to escape the rising water inside the plane, but others who followed the pilot's instructions survived. So it is probably a good idea to look up from your magazine when the flight attendant is giving the safety demonstrations. So it looks like you shouldn't inflate it inside the plane. All right, interesting. Customs officers are watching everywhere. They are watching you from the moment you walk off the plane while you are standing in baggage claim waiting for your bag. And especially when you come out the other side of customs, which is when people who are trying to smuggle something finally let their guard down and get caught. The large two-way mirror in customs behind the customs officer, sit and watch, is part of that process. As you walk past it, it makes you look taller and thinner. So you feel good about yourself and relax and smile. That's when a customs officer suddenly appears and asks you to open your suitcase. Interesting, but I didn't understand that part myself. Birds are one of the major problems for any airport when planes are taking off and landing. Any large bird can easily cause an accident. It flies into the engine, totally destroying itself and the machinery. The smaller birds are less of a problem. In some cases, they can do some damage, but usually they are just roasted. When this happens, there is often such a strong smell of roasted bird that passengers on the plane think that chicken is being cooked, and they are often surprised when they are given a choice of fish or beef at dinner. Now that was interesting. Wheelchairs are a big problem for airline staff. Not only is there always a shortage of them for the people who really need them, but what is worse, some of the people who request them often don't need them at all. I've lost count of the number of times I have pushed someone through the airport, taken them through customs and passport control, gotten a porter to pick up their luggage, and then seen the person jump up in arrivals and move quickly toward their waiting relatives. One flight attendant I know gets so annoyed when this happens that as soon as the passenger gets out of the chair, she shouts to the other passengers, "Ladies and gentlemen, another miracle, courtesy of the airline industry. After years in a wheelchair, he walks again." Not gonna lie, I like that one. The passenger is usually so embarrassed that and it's usually a man, disappears as quickly as he can. All right, that was interesting. Very good. So these are the answers to those questions. Now, number one, most airline passengers believe that the life jacket could save their life. Well, the answer to the first one is false, and line 1 shows it. All right. Number 2, the passengers who inflated their life jacket too early didn't survive. True. Yeah, despite instructions not to pre-inflate their life jackets inside the plane, several passengers did, and they were unable to escape the rising water inside the plane. And number 3, customs officers can see through the mirror in customs. True. All right, very good. And passengers are often caught by customs officers because of their body language. True. Yeah, you relax and smile. Yeah. Number 5, small birds are more dangerous for planes than big birds. False. Smaller birds are less of a problem. Number 6, passengers get confused because what they can smell is not on the menu. True. There is often such a strong smell of roast bird that they are often surprised when they're given a choice of fish or beef. Number 7, there aren't enough wheelchairs for all the people who need them. True. Not only is there always a shortage of them, but, okay, and the last one flight attendant sometimes makes sarcastic comments about passengers who don't really need a wheelchair. True. Yeah. She gets annoyed and she says, look, a miracle. He walks again, and it's usually a he, unfortunately.
That was a lie.
All right, you did great. Well done. Mini grammar. So, such that. Now, look at these two sentences from the Air Babylon extract. The passenger is usually so embarrassed that he disappears as quickly as he can. Or, when this happens, there is often such a strong smell of roasted bird that passengers on the plane think that the chicken is being cooked. All right, very good. We often use so, such, and with that to express a consequence. Something happens, so this is the result. Look, use so plus adjective. For example, the flight was so bumpy that we all fell sick. And that is optional, okay? It's in the parentheses. You can put it or you may ignore it. Use so plus adverb. The taxi driver drove so quickly that we got to the airport on time. Use so much and so many plus a noun. There was so much traffic that we almost lost our flight or missed our flight. Use such a wow, yeah? Such a plus adjective plus single countable noun, like this. It was such a great hotel that we want to go back there next year. Use such plus adjective plus uncountable noun. We had such terrible weather that we didn't really enjoy our vacation. And use such plus adjective plus plural noun. There were such uncomfortable seats that I couldn't sleep at all. All right. I need you to look at this part, look at the mini grammar box, and complete the sentence with so, so much, so many, such, or such a. All right? Take your time, do it yourself. All right? You can stop the video. I'll be waiting. Very good. And if you have done it, check with your friends. All right? My turn. Number one, the flight was so long that I really got bored. Number two, I had such a noisy child sitting next to me that I couldn't sleep at all. Number three, my suitcase was so heavy that I had to pay an excess baggage fee. Number four, I slept so badly on the flight from New York that the jet lag was worse than usual. Number five, we were served such terrible food that I couldn't eat a thing. Number six, there were so many people at check-in that we had to stand in line forever. Number seven, we had so much luggage that we had to get another cart. And last one, the people we met on vacation were such nice people that we kept in touch with them. Very good. And that's all there is to it for the such a wow, such that. You know all of it. Let's continue. After all that vocabulary, reading, after all those practices, it's time for you to speak. Everybody in pairs, you and your friend. Ask and answer the questions. Okay? Let me read the questions for you. How do you feel about flying? How often do you fly? What for? When was the last flight you took? Where did you fly to? Have you ever been very delayed at an airport? How long for? Have you ever missed a flight? Why? Have you ever been stopped in customs? Were you carrying anything that you shouldn't have? Have you ever had very bad turbulence on a flight? How did you feel? Was anyone on the flight injured? Have you ever taken a long-haul flight? Did you get jet lag? Have you ever flown or been upgraded to business class? What was it like? Have you ever been on a flight where there was an emergency? What happened? Have you ever sat next to a screaming baby on a flight or a child that kept kicking your seat? What did you do? Very good. First, write your answers to these questions. Very good. Take your time. Speak with your friends. Share your experiences. Part 5. Listening. You can see the headphones. You are going to listen to an airline pilot and an air traffic controller talking on a radio program. So this is the air traffic controller and this is a pilot. Before you listen, discuss questions 1 to 8 with a partner and imagine what the answers will be. Okay, everybody? So first, read the questions. Take your time. There is no hurry. Very good. Now, I need you to listen to the program. How many of the questions did you answer correctly? So listen and compare your answers. Let's go.
2.7.
With me in the studio today, I have Richard, who's a pilot, and Bryn, who's an air traffic controller. And they are going to answer some of the most frequently asked questions about flying and air travel. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, we're going to start with you, Richard. The first question is, what weather conditions are the most dangerous when flying a plane?
Probably the most dangerous weather conditions are when the wind changes direction very suddenly. This tends to happen during thunderstorms and hurricanes, and it's especially dangerous during takeoff and landing. But it's pretty unusual. I've been flying for 37 years now, and I've only experienced this 3 or 4 times.
What about turbulence? Is that dangerous?
It can be very bumpy and very uncomfortable, but it isn't dangerous. Even strong turbulence won't damage the plane. Pilots always try to avoid turbulence, but it can sometimes occur without any warning, which is why we always advise passengers to wear their seatbelt all the time during the flight.
Which is more dangerous, takeoff or landing?
Both takeoff and landing can be dangerous. They're the most dangerous moments of a flight. Pilots talk about the critical 8 minutes, the 3 minutes after takeoff, and the 5 minutes before landing. Most accidents happen in this period, but I would say that takeoff is probably slightly more dangerous than landing. There is a critical moment just before takeoff when the plane is accelerating, but it hasn't yet reached the speed to be able to fly. If the pilot has a problem with the plane at this point, he or she has very little time, maybe only a second, to abort the takeoff.
Are some airports more dangerous than others?
Yes, some are, particularly airports with high mountains around them and airports in countries with older or more basic navigation equipment. For some difficult airports, like, let's say Kathmandu, they only allow very experienced pilots to land there. And for some of these airports, pilots have to practice on a simulator first before they are given permission to land a plane there.
Thanks, Richard. Over to you, Bryn. What personal qualities do you think you need to be an air traffic controller?
I think confidence is number one. You need to be a self-confident person. You have to be sure of yourself and of the decisions you're making.
Most people imagine that being an air traffic controller is very stressful. Do you agree?
Actually, on a daily basis, the job isn't as stressful as people think. Obviously, it's true that stressful situations do arise, but when you're very busy, you just don't have time to get stressed.
Why is it important for pilots and controllers to have good, clear English?
English is the official language of air traffic control. We communicate with pilots using very specific phrases like runway, wind, cleared for takeoff, turbulence, traffic ahead, to your left, to your right, things like that. And it's true that you could just learn these specific phrases. But then in an emergency, you don't know what language you might need. It's much less predictable, which is why it's vital for pilots and air traffic controllers to speak really good, clear English.
If I could just interrupt here, in fact, there have been several air crashes that happened because the air traffic controller misunderstood something that the pilot had said in English, or vice versa, because their pronunciation wasn't clear enough.
Yes, that's right.
Finally, People tend to think that most pilots and air traffic controllers are men. Would you say that was true?
Not in air traffic control. There are lots of women. It may not be 50-50, but there are plenty of us.
It's true about pilots, though. I mean, there are some women pilots, but it's still pretty much a male-dominated job, I'd say.
Why do you think that is?
People say it's because men have a better sense of direction.
Very funny.
Richard, Bryn, thank you very much.
He said men have a better sense of direction. Hard to believe. All right, I don't want to sound sexist. Very good. You can listen again for details if you need and take notes for each of the questions, but I'm just going to answer them one by one. So, as for the first one, sudden changes of wind directions, especially during thunderstorms and hurricanes, but it's very unusual. Is turbulence really dangerous? Well, most turbulence isn't dangerous, just bumpy and uncomfortable. It won't damage the plane. Pilots try to avoid it, but it can happen without warning, so keep your seatbelts on. Number 3. Which is more dangerous, taking off or landing? Well, both are dangerous. The critical 8 minutes, 3 minutes after takeoff and 5 minutes before landing. But takeoff is a little more dangerous, especially if there is a problem just before the plane goes into the air. The pilot may only have 1 second to abort takeoff. All right, number 4. Are some airports more dangerous than the others? Well, yes, especially ones with the mountains or in countries with older or more basic equipment. Only very experienced pilots are allowed to land in these airports, and sometimes they have to practice on a simulator first. And what personal qualities does an air traffic controller need? Well, an air traffic controller needs to be a self-confident person, sure of him or herself and of their decisions. Is the job really very stressful? Well, in general, it isn't as stressful as people think. There are stressful moments, but you are too busy to feel stressed. Number 7, why is it important for air traffic controllers and pilots to speak English well? Because it is the official language of air traffic control, for example, cleared for takeoff. Pilots and air traffic controllers need to understand each other, especially in an emergency. So they need good, clear English. There have been accidents because of misunderstandings caused by incorrect pronunciation. And the last question, are there more men than women working as pilots and air traffic controllers? Well, there are a lot of female air traffic controllers, although it isn't 50-50. There are some female pilots, but most pilots are men. Now, the final question is directed to you. Which job would you prefer to work as? A pilot or an air traffic controller? And why? Explain your reasons. That's it. My friends, read a newspaper story about an incident that happened during a flight. What exactly happened? Take your time and read it. I'll be waiting.
A few moments later.
So, what exactly happened? Well, an emergency announcement saying that the plane had to make an emergency landing on water was played by mistake and caused lots of problems. But I need you to read it again and circle the correct form of the verbs from 1 to 9. Again, it's your turn.
A few minutes later.
As always, let's read it together. All right, nightmare over the Atlantic. At 11:35 on January 13th, 2012, British Airways flight BA0206 took off from Miami to London. It had been flying for about 3 hours and was over the Atlantic when suddenly a voice came out of the loudspeakers. This is an emergency announcement. We may shortly have to make an emergency landing on water. Immediately panic broke out. One passenger on the flight said, "My wife and I looked at each other and we feared the worst. We imagined that we were about to crash into the Atlantic. It was awful." Everybody was screaming. But about 30 seconds later, the cabin crew started to run up and down the aisle saying that the message had been played by accident and that everything was okay. By this time, a lot of passengers were in tears and were trying to get their life jackets out from under their seats. Another passenger said the captain didn't even say anything about it until just before we started to land, and even then he didn't explain what had happened. It was very traumatic. Everybody was terrified. I can't think of anything worse than being told your plane is about to crash. It was the worst experience of my life. Later, a British Airways spokesman said a pre-recorded emergency announcement was activated by Air on our flight from Miami to Heathrow. "We would like to apologize to passengers on this flight." Well, it's a very bad mistake to make, isn't it? Very good. Now, everybody, look at two sentences about the story. What do you think is the difference between the two highlighted verbs? The pilot was very experienced and had flown this route many times before. When the announcement was made, the plane had been flying for about 3 hours. So, what are the differences in these verbs? All right, well, let me explain. Had flown, the pilot flew this route many times before this particular flight, and had been flying. The flight started 3 hours before the announcement was made. But I'll explain more. You just have to follow me. Okay, my friends, it's time for you to listen.
2.8. 1. We arrived at the airport and checked in. 2.
We were having dinner when the plane hit some turbulence.
At 9 o'clock, most people on the plane were reading or were trying to sleep. 3.
When we arrived at the airport, we suddenly realized that we had left one of the suitcases in the taxi.
4. We'd been flying for about 2 hours when suddenly the captain told us to fasten our seatbelts because we were flying into some very bad weather.
Very good. So these are the narrative tenses. And we have simple past, past perfect, past perfect continuous, and I will explain each one of them. Look, we use simple past to talk about consecutive actions or situations in the past. For example, for the main events in a story. We use past continuous, was, were, plus verb, plus ing. For example, we were having dinner when the plane hit some turbulence. All right? So, to describe a longer continuous past action or situation that was in progress when another action happened, or to describe an action or situation that was not complete at the past time. So, action started in the past, continued, finished in the past. Very good. We use past perfect, had plus past participle to talk about the earlier past, things that happened before the main events. For example, when we arrived at the airport, we suddenly realized that we had left one of the suitcases in the taxi. All right, very nice. Now we use past perfect continuous, had been verb plus ing. All right, with action verbs to talk about longer continuous actions or situations that started before the main events happened and have continued up to that point. Very important. Non-action verbs like be, have, know, like are not usually used in the past continuous or past perfect continuous. Let me show you. For example, we had been flying for about 2 hours when suddenly the captain told us to fasten our seatbelts because we were flying into some very bad weather. All right. Now, past perfect simple or continuous. What's the difference? Let me explain.
2.9.
Lena was crying because she'd been reading a very sad book.
Lena didn't want to see the movie because she'd already read the book.
So the difference lies between these two sentences. Look, the past perfect continuous emphasizes the continuation of an activity. The past perfect simple emphasizes the completion, the end of that activity. That's the only difference. Now, it's time to master all these together with me. Let's do it. This is your test. A. Circle the correct verb form. For example, Meg and Liam McGon got a nasty surprise. Yeah? And in the next one, well, put the verbs in the parentheses in the past perfect simple, had done, or continuous, had been doing. If you think both are possible, use the continuous form. All right, stop the video, take your time, you can rewind and look at the grammar rules as well. And if you have done it, check with your friends and let me check with you. So, got a nasty surprise when they were checking in at the airport yesterday with their baby Sean. They had won 3 free plane tickets to Rome in a competition, and they had been looking forward to their trip for months, but unfortunately they had forgotten to get a passport for their son, so Sean couldn't fly. Luckily, they had arrived very early for their flight, so they still had time to do something about it. They ran to the police station in the airport to apply for an emergency passport. Meg went with Sean to the photo machine while Liam was filling in the forms. The passport was ready in an hour, so they hurried to the gate and got on the plane. Very well. Okay, the first one for the next activity is done. His English was very good. He'd been learning it for 5 years. Number 1, I was really fed up because we had been waiting in line for hours. Number 2, she went to the police to report that someone had stolen her bag. Number 3, it had been raining all morning. The streets were wet and there were puddles everywhere. Number 4, she got to work late because she had left her phone at home and had to go back to get it. Number 5, I almost didn't recognize Tony at the party. He had changed a lot since I last saw him. Number 6, the tourists' faces were very red. They had been sitting in the sun all morning and they hadn't put on any sunscreen. Number 7, I could see from their expressions that my parents had been arguing. Number 8, Junko had a bandage on her arm because she had fallen off her bike that morning. Number 9, I was amazed because I had never seen such an enormous plane before. And last one, how long had you been walking before you realized that you were lost? And that's all there is to it for the grammar exercises. You never cease to amaze me. Woo! It's been a while. Pronunciation. Everybody, I need you to write the simple past of the following verbs in the chart according to the pronunciation of the vowel sound. All right, for example, caught, became. But let's do it with me. All right, let's do it.
2.10.
Boot. Ooh. Flew. Through.
Fish. Hid.
Saw. Ah. Caught. Fought. Thought.
Bird. Heard. Hurt.
Phone. Oh. Drove. Rode. Told. Wrote.
Up. Cut.
Egg. Fell. held, kept, left, read, said, slept.
Train. A. Became. Lay.
All right, very good. Now, I need you to listen to an extract from a narrative and just practice the stressed words. Nothing fancy to it. Let's go.
2.11.
We were on a flight to Lyon, and we'd been flying for about 5 hours. I was reading, and my wife was watching a movie, when suddenly we heard a very loud noise. It sounded as if an engine had exploded. The pilot didn't tell us what had happened until half an hour later.
All right, very good. And that's all there is to it for the pronunciation part. Don't worry, we'll finish this. It's been long, I know. Okay, everybody, this is the last set in the house, speaking. First, read a newspaper article about a flight. Imagine that you were one of the passengers on the plane. Think about why you were flying to North Carolina, who you were with, and what you did during the emergency and how you felt. All right? So read this part, take notes, and write your reactions as a passenger. All right? Very good. And if you have done it, speak about it to your friends. This is the first scenario. Take a screenshot from this and let me show you the second one. Let's go. This is the second scenario. All right? So read a newspaper article about a flight. Imagine you were one of the passengers again, and you were sitting just behind Mrs. Fletcher. Think about why you were traveling to Florida, who you were with, and what you saw and how you felt. So again, read this one, take your notes, and try to react as the passenger. And try to explain the story to your friend. You can choose the first or the second scenario. It's your choice. But before you do that, follow me again. All right. Aside from that, you're going to tell an anecdote. All right. Anecdotes are short stories. The story can be true or invented. If it's invented, try to tell it in such a convincing way that your partner thinks it's true. All right? Very good. For example, think about a time when you had a frightening experience when you were traveling you were on vacation, or when you got sick or had an accident while traveling, or when you arrived home from a trip and had a surprise. Now, as for telling an anecdote or a short story, you can set the scene like this. This happened to me when I was doing this when, all right? The main event, I decided to, because, so then suddenly, at that moment. And what happened in the end? In the end, eventually, I felt. All right. So you can use the two scenarios that I gave you, or you can invent one. The choice is yours. Speak with your friends. Use the narratives to help you. And another one done. Thank you for watching. I promised you, every day I will have a lesson for you. I will do my best. Your English must be perfect. You can do it. Just consistency. Practice on a daily basis and you'll get results. Practice makes progress. Perfection will come in time. Learn to enjoy the journey. Until then, my friends.